Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome to another episode of the Exotical Storytime series. If you're new here, this channel is for women who are mixed race or women who look mixed, even if you're monoracial. So if you're new here, welcome. I hope you subscribe. Please send in your personal stories to exoticalsunited@gmail.com because a lot of people, they like to say that we are delusional, but we can't all be making these stories up. There are thousands of us at this point who all seem to have similar things that are happening to us, so it's really important that we get our stories heard. And let's go ahead and get into today's story. She says, "Hey EU, I have many stories, but I feel this is the first that opened my eyes to colorism. I consider colorism going both ways, but of course, because I have lighter skin, I've experienced it from darker skinned people. We had just moved to a new town and a new church. When I arrived, there were 6 girls around my age. One was pretty much an adult. She was 17 and I was 12. They were also all dark-skinned. Meanwhile, I was lighter in tone, eyes, and had long hair. I used to only wear it straight. Since I was the newbie, every Sunday different church members would approach me, telling me how beautiful I was. Their compliments used to go over my head, though. As time went on, I slowly began hanging around those girls. In the beginning, everything was fine. But once, as we were all hanging out, the 17-year-old looked at me and said, 'You think you're all that because you're light-skinned.' I responded, 'I don't think that, but I know it.' I said it in a jokey way, not realizing she was serious. But even if I knew she was serious, I still would have said it. Her saying that came out of nowhere. The entire group began talking about how light-skinned people think they're all that, etc. And it's so funny because whenever someone says this is actually proof that they think you're all that. And also it's like, what am I supposed to think about myself? Am I supposed to think I'm trash? Am I supposed to think that everyone else is better than me? Like a lot of people, when they don't like how they look, they get mad when you like how you look, especially if you look different than them. But let's continue. She says, "It was really awkward because I knew nothing about colorism and wondered if they overheard nearly every Sunday someone approaching me telling me I was beautiful, and that's why they were mad, because they weren't getting complimented." Yeah, I've noticed that most people, they tend to actually be jealous over compliments. Like they get mad if you get told you're beautiful more often than them, or they get mad if people compliment your hair texture more often than they compliment theirs. A lot of women who have low self-esteem, they are literally comparing every aspect of themselves to you. So yes, they will literally count how many times you get complimented, and then they'll count how many times they get complimented. And if they have less compliments, then you are their competition, or they view it like that's not fair. They're only complimenting her because of XYZ. I've noticed that a lot of times when a woman feels like her own beauty is inferior, she will then pinpoint whatever differences you have. She'll be like, well, what is it about her? What is it, because she's light-skinned? Is it because she's white? Is it because she has green eyes or she has long hair? Like, what is it? And so I've noticed that some people, depending on what their inferiority complexes are, they will latch on to that and then they will accuse you of thinking you're better than them because of that. But let's continue. She says, "I had also never been referred to by a skin color before. They then began targeting me. Once, as we were at the 17-year-old's house, she said to me out of nowhere, 'I could beat you up.' Again, it was random, but I responded, 'Oh, really?' and charged at her and knocked her down. She didn't see it coming, but why did she tell her mother I attacked her for no reason? I mean, I did attack her, but not for no reason. In my opinion, she enticed it. I also feel if I didn't establish that dominance, their attacks would have been more brutal than they already were." On a different day, one of the girls asked an older woman at the church how to grow long hair like mine, but also added, "But I don't want my hair to look like a bird's nest like hers." Oh my gosh, this reminds me of me. Somebody called my hair a rat's nest before. By the way, I have type 3 hair. People would call my hair rat's nest, unambiguous people, by the way. They would call it a rat's nest or a bird's nest, or they would say my hair looked like a tree or it looked like a bush. And they were saying all of these things as if it was supposed to be negative. Meanwhile, the people who were making fun of my type 3 hair were people who had type 4 hair. And the people who had the type 4 hair, their standard of beauty was your hair needs to be as straight as possible. But for me, because I wasn't raised with internalized texturism, I never viewed having my hair, curly or having it a bit puffier. I never viewed that as being lower in beauty. But I've noticed a lot of people, they expose themselves by saying comments like that. Notice how a lot of people will use colorism and texturism against multiracial or multi-generationally mixed people. Anyway, let's continue. She says, "Wow, my mama was right there too, and we all just stared at her. Church members, including my mama, began telling me they were just jealous and to ignore them. But I didn't understand jealousy, so it was hard for me to understand that jealous girls make insulting comments to belittle the target. So I stayed friends with them. I have always had long hair my entire life, so if I didn't feel like doing it, even now, I don't do it because I don't have to do much to look pretty, unlike the girl who made that comment. Exactly. I've noticed that in the unambiguous Black community, there seems to be this obsession with everything looking perfect. Like your hair has to be perfectly slayed in every single area. I know I've had people tell me that I need to do my hair when my hair was like not perfectly bone straight, or, there was a curl that was out of place or something. But I don't feel like all of my beauty goes down the drain or all of my confidence goes down the drain because I have one piece of frizz. I feel like a lot of women who have inferiority complexes, they feel like everything about their physical appearance needs to be perfect in order for them to be treated like humans. And that is not my problem. I'm not saying that I can't have empathy for that or anything, but just because someone else has trauma doesn't mean it's okay for them to inflict trauma upon me. And I've noticed that a lot of women who feel inferior, whether it's in terms of beauty, skin tone, hair texture, their weight, or whatever it is, a lot of those women will then try to inflict trauma upon you because they want you to hate yourself just like how they hate themselves. But anyway, let's continue. She says, I should have insulted her back because her hair was as long as the snap of a finger and, dare I say it, quote unquote, nappy. I found it interesting she asked the lady how to get long hair like mine instead of asking me, but used my hair as an example and then insulted it. I'll admit, sometimes when I revisit these stories, I get angry all over again and regret not saying anything. All their hair was the same length, which they had none. Some months later, I became isolated from the group because I started responding to their jokes, and even at age 12 to 13, my mouth was slick. Their insults became increasingly demeaning, and I stopped caring about having fake friends. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of us MLS women, or quote-unquote pretty girls, maybe depending on your personality type, I've noticed a lot of us do have to learn how to be very assertive because otherwise people will just treat us like doormats. And a lot of people feel like it's okay to treat us badly because they think that the rest of our lives are just so perfect and privileged and we're pretty and we think we're better and blah, blah, blah. And, we think we're better because we have a lighter skin tone or because our hair texture is a certain way or because you have freckles or you have lighter eyes and all this other crap. And so I have noticed that a lot of times when you are dealing with people who are very narcissistic, very aggressive, you almost have no choice but to snap back at them. I know that I used to do that when I was in my teenage years. Eventually, I just started snapping back at people. There is no wrong answer on this channel. I support dark femininity. That means that if you choose to give a comeback, by all means, give a comeback, because I know that for me, I'm not caping for women who wouldn't cape for me. I am not supporting women who I know would not support me. And I am certainly not going to encourage or give other women the privilege of being my friend if those women are like catty towards me for no reason and, they're constantly trying to humble me and stuff. I will instantly cut those people off. I don't care if they say I'm acting stuck up or I think I'm better than them, because I've noticed that this has happened to me at jobs too. Like if unambiguous people at my job are mean to me and then I stop hanging out with them and then I happen to hang out with like white people or Latin American people at work, then those same people who formerly bullied me will be like, oh, she's trying to be white, or oh, she thinks she's white. She's only hanging out with white people. And it's like, no, I'm not hanging out with people because of their race like you. I don't define my whole entire identity based on race and all of my friendships based on race. I define my friendships based on how you treat me. So if you treat me bad and these other people treat me fine and they happen to be Asian, white, or whatever, then yes, I'm going to hang out with them and not hang out around people who are toxic. So I've noticed that a lot of people who have this victim mentality, once you cut them off, they blame it on you were a colorist or you were a texturist, you were a featurist, you thought you were better than me, that's why you didn't hang out with me. And a lot of people refuse to acknowledge the fact that no, maybe you had an inferiority complex and you didn't realize it and you subconsciously treated me worse, and so I can feel that because I'm emotionally intelligent, and then I decided to act accordingly. But let's continue. She says, we always come from a good place on wanting to build meaningful friendships, but they're stuck on seeing us as a competition and mentally cannot move on from that. Yeah, I've noticed that too, where sometimes women's jealousy will get in the way of their friendships. Like, how you said with people complimenting you at church, I remember that exact same thing happened to me. It actually was at church as well. Then my friend, she started going around and asking everybody, who do you think's prettier, me or Exoticals United? Because she was trying to convince herself that she was somehow prettier, or I don't know if she was trying to get somebody to say that she was prettier. But yes, I've noticed a lot of girls, they get triggered or they get angry and jealous when you receive a simple compliment. And that's because their self-esteem is so low to the point where they feel like, if I'm in the room with another woman and she gets a compliment, then that means that I'm lower than her somehow. And those women that view every little thing as a competition? Your hairstyle is a competition with hers. Your fashion sense is a competition. The shoes you wear are a competition. What kind of purse are you carrying? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of house do you have? What kind of man do you have or not have? How are your kids behaving? What do your kids look like? Oh, my kids are prettier than yours. Oh, but my son is lighter than you. My daughter is lighter than you. There are some women who are so insecure to the point where, yes, they literally make every little thing a competition. And then if they feel like they have an area that they are beating you in, they will hammer that into the ground. Like I saw one Black woman empowerment content creator. She was talking about how she has a better body than a lot of women that have a lighter complexion. So she began body shaming bigger women who happen to be lighter skinned, or women who were like mixed race and stuff. She began shaming them and talking about how their thighs are dented up and all of this stuff. So it's like a lot of women who feel inferior to you socially, if they can find any flaw within you, they will try to hammer that in and constantly bring it up. Like, oh, but your nose is big. Oh, but your teeth are crooked. Oh, but your hair is broken off. Oh, but you have to get a relaxer. Like I remember one time I used to wear my hair curly to church. It was kind of like the style I would wear it in would be like this photo right here. So very loose curls, not quite as long as this picture, but loose curls. And I remember somebody complimented my curl pattern and they were like, your hair is so pretty. Like, I love how it's shiny and whatever. And then this other girl, she was like, oh, Exoticals United uses a curling wand. So first of all, I mean, yes, I do use a curling wand sometimes, and I had told her that I used a curling wand, but I was not using a curling wand that day. So she was trying to make it as if, oh, her hair is not naturally that cute, like she had to heat damage it in order to get those curls, when that actually was not the case at all. So some people, they will try to find even the tiniest thing and use that to like bring you down a notch. But let's continue. She says, I saw them as potential friends, but they made up their minds to be an enemy from the get. After I completely distanced myself from them, one Sunday at Sunday school, the topic was occupations, and by this time the 17-year-old was 18, so she was no longer a part of the youth group. She came in early but in a different room and eavesdropped on our conversations. When asked what did I want to be by the youth leader, I said I wanted to be a model. Now, we weren't the only kids, there were boys too, and all the boys had crushes on me. She was related to one. Sunday school ended, and we went about our ways, waiting for church to start. I hated the boys, I could not stand them, they were so annoying. A bit later, two, one being her brother, approached me and began saying, you need to shave your mustache before becoming a model. Admittedly, I was very hurt and began crying. I told my mother, she told their parents, and the boys told their parents after Sunday school ended. They went to talk to the now 18-year-old, and for some reason, this grown, ugly biatch was talking about me at 13, way after the occupation conversation, and told them she wants to be a model. Well, she needs to shave her mustache first. And she is who they got that from. In my time there, I never commented on their looks, though they weren't cute, but they always commented on mine. Yep, I'm not surprised. Fun fact, I've actually been told by a guy before that I needed to shave my mustache as well. This is when I was also about 15 or 16. I used to sometimes have a little bit of hyperpigmentation around my mouth or whatever. And because I was so scared to use any sort of skin brightening products at the time, like I was scared to use vitamin C or alpha hydroxy acids or anything like that, because I was so afraid of people thinking like, oh, she's trying to be lighter, she's being racist, that I just tried to cover up my face with makeup sometimes. And there were times where my makeup, it did look a little bit bad. And I noticed that, yeah, people will try to use whatever they can. Like if your mouth area looks even slightly darker because you're lighter skin, sometimes people, maybe they notice it more, or they just try to call it out as if it's this big deal or a big flaw. But yeah, that's just another humbling tactic. Let's continue. She says, even when I would respond, it would never be about their looks, not to avoid deeply offending them. But at the time, I wasn't the type to attack looks. It just was not me. Looking back, I realized they were just so obsessed with my looks. And when we did hang around, my looks would stay being the topic of conversation. That's how I know you must be beautiful. Because, like, now I'm to the point where if anyone is discussing my looks in any way, whether it's positive or negative, that means that you still noticed me. You took time out of your day to stare at me so hard that you noticed the slight one shade darker hyperpigmentation on my chin as a 16-year-old girl. And you were staring at my face that hard. You love my skin tone that much to where you were staring at it so deeply to where you were trying so hard to find a flaw. It took you that long to try to find something wrong. Or like you were staring at my pimple so hard because you couldn't find anything else to talk about. And so you had to bring that up because you actually do think that I look good. You actually do think that I'm beautiful, even with the pimple, even with the hyperpigmentation, even with my makeup looking orange, even with my hair looking like it's a bush. So now I'm to the point where if people even give attention to my looks at all, then I take it as a compliment. Hell yeah, I sure will. Dark femininity, baby. That is called transmutation. I will transmute that energy, whether it is positive or negative, and I will say, oh yeah, I must be a bad bitch because you were really staring that hard at me. Like you were really taking time out of your day. Forget about your own personal level up journey. Forget about your own personal growth journey. Forget about even focusing on your beauty. You feel like your beauty is so low in comparison to mine, or your attractiveness is so low in comparison to mine to the point where you have to take time out of your day to try to find flaws with how I look. Wow, that's a huge compliment. I mean, is my face that good looking? Is my skin that good looking to the point where you're like, oh no, I just can't let her be pretty. I have to try to find a flaw. But yeah, that's kind of how I view it now. Anyway, let's continue. She says, it's all they would ever talk about. Though they never complimented me fully, they were almost always insults. I could tell in their body language they desired my looks, like how they would stare at me, if that makes sense. Yes, I've noticed that some people, this actually could be a girl or even a guy, who wishes he had your looks. He wishes he had your phenotype. He wishes he could have your body type, your skin tone, your hair texture. But yes, I've noticed girls do this as well. I call it phenotype envy. This is what happens when maybe your internalized beauty standard is different than your natural phenotype. There's nothing wrong with that, but that could cause insecurity if that phenotype is not attainable for you. So I've noticed some women who, let's say you meet their beauty standard or you are way closer to whatever their beauty standard is, yes, they get triggered and they get jealous because they have phenotype envy. If they could trade bodies with you, they would. If they could have been born in your body, they would in a minute. And that's why they're so obsessed. People only get obsessed over things that they care about. So if they're commenting on your looks, your skin tone, whatever, that's because they care about it. So you know how people try to say, oh, lighter skinned people are the colorists. No, actually, there are plenty of people who have darker skin tones or whatever who are obsessed with color. Anyway, she says, I could always tell in their body language they desired my looks, like how they would stare at me, if that makes sense. It was kind of like someone staring at a painting or something, lol. Yes, this actually reminds me of when I was at church. Sometimes other girls, they would stare at my hair because I've always been into hairstyling. Like I almost went to school to do hair and makeup and stuff like that. So I've always had tons of hair secrets, like doing the different curl formers, wave formers, curling wands, wearing it natural, like all of that different stuff. And I've noticed, yes, some girls, when they are like jealous or they wish they could have your hair texture, your skin tone, your body shape or whatever, they will do whatever they can to try to examine you. I've even noticed this with white girls sometimes at the gym. When I'm like doing my squats and I'm doing my booty workout in particular, I've noticed some girls will actually stare at me from across the gym and then they'll start copying my workout. And I actually don't care if people copy me as long as they don't try to make fun of me, kind of like how they did in your case, where they're trying to insult you, they're trying to put you down. Meanwhile, a lot of these girls would love to look like you if they could. They would love to receive as many compliments as you're receiving. They would love to have the level of confidence and self-love that you have. And that's a trigger. Anyway, she says, like they were really analyzing me and they would be directly in front of me. So weird. Anyway, so when I realized she was the one who initially made the comment and yet again attacked my looks, it was the last straw. And I then began attacking hers and making fun of how dark she was to her face. And tell me why this girl was offended. Wow. I sensed being dark-skinned was a sensitive topic for her, and I went straight for the jugular. Exactly. And this is what I'm actually trying to prevent because a lot of people, like in the darker skin, unambiguous community, they will make fun of our skin tones. They'll say, like, we're going to age badly and, we look like uncooked meat or we look like our skin tone is uneven. Like, let's say you have tan skin and then you also have light brown skin, then you also have a caramel skin tone on some parts of your body. So I've noticed other people will make fun of lighter skin tones, but there are some light skins out there that will come right back and say, okay, you made fun of my skin tone. Why don't I make fun of your skin tone? And I've noticed that a lot of times, if a person is like insecure and they don't realize that, you can dish it, but you can't take it back, a lot of those people, oh yeah, they will get so offended. And it's like, okay, if you know that you can't take it back, then don't dish it. Don't dish it out if you can't take it back. So that's why in this community, I'm trying to give us a space for ourselves so that we can all vent, because I really do feel like a lot of the Black women empowerment space has gone too far and they've gotten out of hand with the way that they disrespect people who have a lighter skin tone or people who are darker skinned and mixed or people who have a multiracial background or they're multi-generationally mixed. So now this community is saying, hey, just so you know, we have a safe space and we have a community. We are getting intel on the Black women empowerment space or the Black men spaces, whatever, all these other spaces online. We are listening to what you guys say about us. And guess what? We have the option to respond too. We have the option to be petty too. Not all of us are going to go down that path, but guess what? There are some of us MLS people who've got a little bit of gangster in there. Okay. So yes, there are times where a fellow MLS person will have a comeback. And I'm kind of convinced that a lot of the stories that unambiguous women tell about, oh, this girl, she made fun of my hair, she made fun of this, she made fun of that. A lot of times I do ask myself in my mind, like, wait a minute, but did you start off picking on her and, automatically say, oh, you think you're better, you think you're this, you think you're that. And then maybe she one day got fed up and gave you a comeback. And now you want to cry colorism or texturism, featureism. Now you want to cry racism. So yeah, I do think about that sometimes. But let's continue. She said, like nearly 2 years of brutal verbal abuse from every girl at church at that. And I finally comment on her dark skin since she stayed talking about mine and the so-called behaviors associated with such. And this girl acted like the world was ending. She acted like I was a white person and called her the hard ER word. It was crazy and funny and happy that I got my lick back. For some reason, the girls completely stopped hanging around her, and I became the leader of the group, and she was livid. And though she was grown, she did not hide it, but it was so glorious, but short-lived, as they returned back to her. But by that time, I was already done with them. I used them for what I needed them for. Which was to get back at her. Though they knew not to mess with me by then, they would still try, but treaded very lightly, no pun intended. By this time, I was probably like 16, and the ex-18-year-old who was about 21 at this time, she and I got into a screaming match at an event at our church in front of everyone, new and old. I was talking to someone, and she randomly walked up to me and began going off on me about my stance regarding the topic of conversation, though she had nothing to do with the conversation. The older women had to come and defuse the situation because I wasn't playing with that broad. I could tell me not cowering made her even more aggressive as time went on. I'm trying to tell the Black community, stop messing with MLS people. We're trying to be nice right now. Like, I'm being nice on this channel. I said that once I hit 10K, I would start acting a fool. We are being so patient. I feel like as multiracial people, multi-generationally mixed people, regardless of complexion or even light-skinned monoracials, we have been so patient for so many decades just dealing with being an emotional punching bag. And a lot of these people do not even realize how much what they say about us can be hurtful. And so a lot of times these people, they will carry on intergenerational trauma. They will make us their emotional punching bag. They will try to humble us or bring us down a notch or try to make us feel inferior. And yes, some of us are going to pop off and pop back. So my word of advice, if you hate mixed people or if you hate people who are light skinned or you hate people who have a looser hair texture than you, my advice is tread carefully because you don't know who you're dealing with. Some of us will be silent, some of us will cut you off, but there are some of us that will use that dark femininity and will have something to say about it. So let's continue. She says, I could tell me not cowering made her even more aggressive as time went on. After that mustache comment, the B word had a target on her back. I never instigated, but I participated and finished it. I only listed a few instances regarding them. I have many more stories. Me being a target at church lasted from like age 12 to 17. I've noticed a lot of us have trauma at church. I think we should do a series on this because I have a lot to say on this. You guys seem to have a lot to say on this. I feel like church is a place where a lot of covert narcissists can thrive. I feel like church is a place where a lot of people, they could accuse you of being quote unquote fast or being promiscuous because you are wearing makeup or you're wearing hair extensions or whatever. And I feel like religion is used as a vehicle to gaslight women who are considered beautiful because, first of all, a lot of religions are filled with pygmies, but we should talk about this more. Anyway, she says, it set the precedent of what my college life would be like, which was a billion times worse. I wonder if you went to an HBCU. But anyway, she says, the majority are all single mothers, baby mamas with multiple kids. Meanwhile, I have a degree and a career, social life, friends, and live comfortably. Not in a relationship and don't want to be. But I have a few men in rotation and they all know about each other. And they are currently trying to win me over. So they do the most and buy me things. Exotical tax! This is one of my favorite story times so far because this is the reality of what a lot of women are going to deal with when you try to bully MLS women. This girl said she was bullied from 12 to 17. So yes, after 5 years of being consistently bullied every Sunday by the same girls, yes, eventually a person is going to snap. What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.